I just want to quickly introduce everybody. This is Tim Walton from Microsoft. Obviously, the topic of today, Windows Server 2003 end of life, is an important subject, I think, for most customers. Unfortunately, Champion is going to go over some of the strategies around Windows Server 2003 coming end of life, what customers can do, and what your options are. So with that, I'll be on the call if you have any questions about Windows 2003 specifically or any of the solutions. I believe I'll be passing over to Paul and Kevin to carry on the conversation.
Well, thank you, Tim. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. So we'll get moving here, folks. Just quickly to go over the agenda today. It was similar to what you saw in your invitations. We've gone through most of the welcome and introductions now. We'll give you a quick overview of what Champion is all about. And then we'll dig into the meat of the presentation, a little bit about what is happening with Windows 2003 Server R2 and when, the risks, and then really what we're really here to talk about today is what are your alternatives for upgrading to later and supported operating system, a little bit about the Champion approach, and then we'll get into those questions and answers that Kevin alluded to. First, a little commercial, if you will, on Champion Solutions Group. Champion is a 35-year-old company. We do about $100 million in business annually, and we've really got two major competencies that are relevant today. One is we're very big in the Microsoft world, both on-premise and in the cloud. You can read over some of our recognition and awards there. We are also a very significant infrastructure provider with some of the partnerships that are listed there with IBM, NetApp, Cisco, and many others. So as we go through this today, just keep us in mind. We are a company that can handle your 2003 eradication, if you will, regardless of how you choose to move forward. I can best summarize what Champion is all about towards the bottom right-hand corner. I'm quoting our CEO, Chris Pyle, says we are changing the economics of the IT data center. And that's really is in one sentence is really what Champion is all about. So we're very fluid in working between on-prem, the cloud, hybrid, whatever your business needs, we can take you in that direction. So enough with the Champion commercial now, moving on. So the situation with 2003 Server R2, on July 14th, 2015, all support for Microsoft Windows 2003 Server and R2 will end. There will be no further updates of any kind from Microsoft. And you can see that I have some of that listed out, but and that includes phone support. So, you know, to put that in perspective a little bit, when this situation occurs, that normal process that we all go through when we have a serious problem of picking up the phone and calling Microsoft won't be available to us anymore. No patches, no hotfix, no service packs. And just to put that in a little perspective, 2013 there were 37 critical updates released for Windows Server 2003 R2. So not thousands and thousands of them, but a pretty significant number. The risks, and I know for the more technical people on the phone, some of this may be obvious, but we get asked a lot from our customers to talk about the risk, and so we'll go through those quickly. So we all know that it's a very dynamic world out there today. The situation is constantly changing. The threats are constantly changing, and you know, suffice it to say, the operating system will no longer evolve to adapt to those threats. Of course, application changes may also expose some flaws in the operating system that may go unresolved. The same with device drivers. And probably one of the most concerning things for me is that outages may be protracted or even unresolvable. One of the things that we like to emphasize as well that may or may not be obvious to you is that organizations that remain on Server 2003 will fail Microsoft compliance audits. So there's a pretty urgent issue there that may be very important to your business. So the bottom line is that there's this group of gathering threats out there. There's the potential of increasing instability in your system. There's the potential of all the external threats that we read about every day and that we all fight every day. And it's really hard to get your hands around just how significant those risks are, given the fact that you cannot adjust them as time moves forward. So certainly a situation that we all want to move away from as quickly as we can. Now, like most things, this has a silver lining. There are some nice side effects, as we call it, of upgrading. One is, and this is something that's not often thought of, is that the effort can actually pay for itself and reduce costs going forward. And we'll talk a lot more about how that works and how that manifests itself. Once those costs are recovered, you've of course got lower operating costs going forward, and again, much more explanation on that to come. If it's considered at this time, the organization can also be positioned to leverage the cloud. And this doesn't necessarily mean that the cloud would have to be adopted at this time, but the groundwork can be laid to do that, where that'll be a low friction option in the future. And of course, complexity and security of IT are both affected positively with all of this. So again, we'll cover the details about how that happens as we move forward. So there are really three major methods to address this issue, address this situation, I should say. The old tried and true upgrade the OS in place and hope for the best. I know none of us likes this one, but that is certainly one possible alternative. And we won't spend a lot of time on that today because I think that particular method is pretty well understood by all of us. There's building a parallel server and migrating to that. It's very much the same as the first option, except it takes the risk out of harming the production server and allows us to do that in more of a test dev environment. What we'll be focused on mostly today is the area that's highlighted in green on the bottom of the screen, and migrate only the application directly to target servers. And when we're talking about this, there will be always in the context of three potential targets: on-premises targets, cloud targets, and hybrid targets. Now I know some of you out there are very aware of what's going on in the cloud. Some of you are probably tired of hearing about the cloud, and some of you are probably very interested in the cloud. And no matter which of those categories you fall into, though, certainly if you've got a significant number of 2003 servers and you're planning to upgrade those, this is a great time to at least consider the cloud. And that could be considering it for an immediate move. It could be just considering it as something that you might do in later years. But it's certainly a great time to think about it, even if you ultimately choose not to go that route. Just some data around cloud. Recently, Microsoft reduced costs by 50% and raised SLAs to 4 nines on their database as a service offering. And one of the reasons that I point that out is because it's a sort of a Moore's law-like effect on computing, if you will, when you see service levels going up by that much, going from 3 nines to 4 nines, and costs going down by 50%. That's certainly exponential. And also Google and Amazon have announced similar price reductions in 2014. Of course, with the cloud, there's no OS-related licensing to buy per se. It's part of the deal, if you will. You can reduce server footprint and cost, and again, we'll talk a lot more about that going forward. And probably one of the most interesting things to me and with our customers that have experienced the cloud and are using the cloud to some degree or another is this idea of elasticity. And when you can turn up servers and turn down servers and increase the size of servers and turn on backups and disperse your data geographically and all those things without a lot of advanced planning and without any advanced investments, it really is a very enabling situation. So not to spend too much time on the cloud, but just to reinforce this is a great time to think about it. There's also a great opportunity at this time to consolidate, and as we move through the presentation, we'll tie together for you how that actually takes place. But just using some industry standard data here, you can see that all the way to the left, it's got your traditional data center, which is really your physical server data center, which is is provisioned in such a way that there's a lot of waste there, and that's not new news to anyone. And then as you move to virtualization, a lot of that waste goes away. One thing that's interesting is if you look at some of the data points that we have in the box above the graphs, many cases that underutilization does actually get moved to the cloud, and that can really hurt the cloud value proposition. So with our methodology, you get something that looks more like the graph all the way to the right. Things are consolidated as much as possible and far beyond what could just be accomplished in the virtualization world, and the end result is a much more efficient footprint that is really optimized whether you stay on-prem or whether you move to the cloud. So, like most processes, we start this out with an assessment, and we'll cover more details on that. But the very first thing we do is we talk to our clients about whether the cloud makes sense in any way, shape, or form. Is it something the client's willing to consider? Does the cloud meet the customer's business requirements? If it does, then that's terrific. And if not, then we move into either a hybrid or an on-prem scenario. You will see that I mentioned Azure in here. We do migrate to all of the major cloud providers, but if in the event that one of our clients does not have a current relationship with a cloud provider, we do recommend Microsoft Azure. So again, this is just to establish whether the cloud is even on the radar or not, if you will. So moving forward, we then move into the data collection process, and this is a process where we gather all the information about the inventory and the environment. We provide an assignment of migration difficulty, and please bear with me, but this will all manifest itself in a report that we're going to see shortly that I think will clarify it all. But this is one of the key aspects, and one of our key differentiators is that the output of the assessment doesn't just simply tell you what you've got, but it really gives you an excellent snapshot of the difficulty involved in moving from 2003 to 2008 R2 or 2012 R2. That data is combined with our 35 years of expertise and brought into our process where we produce an output for you that looks just like the screen that I'm showing to you here. Now, without going through this in great detail, this is just a subset of a report. But what this report does is it does a couple of things. One is if you could imagine this being 50, 100, 200, 300, 900 servers, however many Windows 2003 servers you might have, at a glance, you can look at this report and see that the stuff that's in green is low complexity and low risk and can be migrated with relative ease and quick and speed and quickly. Whereas the stuff in red is going to take some heavy lifting, if you will, and the light green is in the middle of those two things. So after collecting all that data, we boil all of it down into a relatively simple report that at a glance you can get an idea of just how large of challenge that you have moving forward on Windows 2003. And we feel it's very important for our clients to get this kind of information as soon as possible, because it may turn out that this is not an urgent issue for you, that you may have months and months before you have to worry about this. So you may be in a position where you could start working on this in June, or it may be that you really need to start, tomorrow, if you will. And the idea of this report is to give you that information. The other thing that comes out of this report is you see on the bottom right that we've consolidated 7 servers here down into 3, and this goes into some of that discussion that we had earlier about saving money going forward, and this project's ultimately and potentially paying for themselves. So 7 servers down to 3. Due to the fact that many of these applications can be combined on their target servers, is a real opportunity to, as I said, take advantage of that silver lining that is associated with migrating from Server 2003. So that report is the output of our assessment, and that report also allows us to provide you with a proposal as to what it would take to actually do the migration. So let's talk a little bit now about migration. Before I do that, though, I'm going to back up once because I want to emphasize something here. Is that on this report that I'm showing, we're talking about migrating applications. We are not talking about migrating servers, and that is how we are able to consolidate. So this is not a traditional server consolidation where you're spinning up virtual machines on a single host, as a for instance, and consolidating that way. But this is actually consolidating applications on your Windows OS instances, and being able to benefit from that reduction. So again, back to the first step in the migration. We take the applications that come out of that report. We put them into 3 buckets. There's applications that can be migrated with a single process, a single maintenance window that is non-intrusive. These are the minority of applications, admittedly, but there are applications that do not require any downtime to migrate. The second category are the applications that we do in 2 steps, and one is we call the seed step, which is the collection of the majority of the application and data, and then the second stage is the sync stage, that is where we capture the remaining parts of the application and the remaining data that was locked during the seed process. And the final one is really very similar to the second one, except this is very large applications that have lots of data, and we may actually need to schedule more than one maintenance window in order to capture all those. It depends on a lot of variables, how much bandwidth is available, your business tolerance to being down. But nonetheless, we have a process for those as well. At the end of the day, though, typically only one outage window is required to get those applications moved. And I'll stress the word applications again, from one server to another. The next step, and this is one of the most important parts of all, is of course the project plan. So taking that categorization that we had in the previous slide, we build all of that into a project plan and marry that with the business needs and application categories that come out of those buckets. And people often ask us at this point, how long does the migration take? And the answer is that is highly variable, and it's usually driven by the needs of your business and the ability to tolerate downtime in order to do the migrations, even if it's only minuscule amounts of downtime. It will, as we all know, sometimes getting those maintenance windows is difficult to schedule. So that's the largest goal. And then, of course, our clients have to play an important role in the application test planning and testing. So generally speaking, business needs and the availability of client personnel to do the testing are the major drivers in the length of the project.
And Paul, this is a non-intrusive migration, so even if something goes wrong, you can always get back to where you were prior to the migration, right?
That's absolutely right, Kevin. And there's two major things that we should emphasize there. Number one is the source servers that are being migrated from do not require any software to be installed on them to do the initial assessment in this migration. The second thing to mention is that, yeah, they are left undisturbed as part of this process. So it's a zero risk process to move this, which is a real nice benefit that takes us away from the kind of risk that we would have if we were just laying down a new operating system on top of an existing application.
So to mitigate the risk, you could test this time and time again to make sure that it was 100% foolproof before you ever did it on a more permanent basis, right?
Absolutely. There's no reason to cut over at all until we're absolutely 100% certain.
That's great.
So moving into the execution phase a little bit. First off, we manage all critical paths. And we coordinate all resources, including our client resources. So this is something that is very much a holistic offering that brings the project management, the tools, the capabilities, the experience, and gets the job done soup to nuts. Again, I'll emphasize again, our client does play a major role to develop test plans and execute application testing. One of the things that we also offer as part of this program is that we can provide test targets in Azure to allow for application testing. So that's depending on what our clients have available. If you have a large test dev farm already, this may not be a lot of value to you. But a lot of what comes up often with our clients is, okay, I need to test where? So this is something that we can make available as part of this process. And as we already discussed, migration durations are highly variable. You can say minimum of 30 days. Some can go to 6 months. Some could be potentially longer, which is one of the reasons that we emphasize that it's so important to get the assessment information sooner than later.
And Paul, I know a lot of our customers have enterprise agreements with Microsoft that in most cases that we found, they have an Azure component in there that they might not be utilizing. Is this an area where they could now see if these applications work in the cloud with really no risk at all?
It sure is, Kevin. So, as part of the testing process, the clients would have the opportunity to run their applications in Azure. And as you mentioned, depending on the agreement with Microsoft, they may already have Azure capability available, potentially at no cost. It may already be part of the arrangement. And this is a good way to kick the tires on that, if you will. So, worst case, or minimally, I should say, you've got a test target that's available for you, and ultimately it may be something that you can factor into either your production or your test dev environments, or DR for that matter.
Right, and I know that Tim's worked with a lot of customers in this vein. Tim, do you have anything to add to that?
Yes, I do. Sorry, I was on mute there. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, that's okay, Tim.
Yeah, absolutely. We do find that there's a lot of Microsoft customers that are out there that do have this Azure subscription that can be utilized, and as you've stated here, it's a great way to test this without that risk, as you begin to move those workloads to a newer platform or maybe even to the cloud. So a lot of customers, that's probably the first workload that they look at when they're moving things to the cloud, is a test environment, which is little risk, and the cost is negligible on acquiring new hardware, etc. So yes.
And even licensing when it comes to OS, because in Azure, like the 2008 R2 or the 2012 R2 license would be included in your Azure virtual server, so they could test it without even investing in an OS even up front, right? Right, Tim?
It depends on the way that their EA is written, but generally speaking, most of the customers, either through MSDN, should be able to spin up these test machines and utilize them to test those workloads without cost.
See that, and you can't ask for better than that. No risk, no cost, right?
That's great. That's great points. So appreciate that, Tim. Anything else, Tim, you'd like to add?
Yeah, I just like to, underscore the things that you've been going over to the people who are listening in and watching. When it comes to 2003, as you stated in these slides, there really isn't a silver bullet. We wish there was, but here and what we're seeing, what customers are doing, and specifically the service that Champion's providing here, is you've got to have this programmatic, comprehensive offering through detailed reporting and risk assessment, which allows you then to refactor, rehost, revise, whatever that is, to get that 2003 workload into its new host or into the cloud, whatever you're doing, is the best way to do it. Because sometimes, to your point, it could be the fact that you're moving it to an updated host or an updated OS, or it could mean that you're simply revising or retiring that workload because of the revision to the system that you've done. So it's always an opportunity, and that's why I like this offering, from Champion, because it's looking at each of those scenarios through that detailed reporting.
Great. Well, thank you, Tim. Okay, well, we'll keep moving along here, and then we should have a good 15 minutes or so at the end for questions and answers. So just a quick synopsis on the 2003 server end of service. So, and we don't mean to be alarmist, but the fact of the matter is, being good advisors to our clients, we're definitely telling them that time is running out, and that there's a lot of risk in not knowing what the overall complexity might be, and with an assessment process like ours, you can get to the point where you at least know where you stand as quickly as possible. Again, for some people, this is a great time to leverage the cloud. Just if not now, it can certainly be looked at in the future. But given the amount of work that a lot of our clients will have to go through to do this this update certainly is a great time to consider that kind of a change. Now, something we haven't talked about so far is that in many cases, some of the assessment costs can be offset by Microsoft. So with our partnership with Microsoft and with Microsoft's interest in having clients, move successfully from 2003 to a later platform, there are several programs out there that we can leverage to help to offset some, and in some cases all, of the cost of the assessment. So that puts our clients in a position where they can get that data. They don't have to wonder about the complexity of the next steps, and they can really make an informed decision about whether this is something that they must raise to the highest possible urgency in their business, or whether it's something that they've got a few months on before they have to act.
Yeah, I'd reinforce that point as well. At Microsoft we do have offerings that to partners like Champion that we can give to offset those costs, and some of them are very compelling, especially if there's a cloud component such as Azure to it that can help Champion do the assessment and minimize the cost to you, the end customer. There is a lot of offerings around that, and including things like, a lot of the customers sort of push back on, well, during the testing phase, or I may be side by side, is there any cost for running maybe something in the cloud and on premises? We do even have offerings that can address that for a certain time period. In other words, essentially giving you some of the Azure usage during that migration for not necessarily for free, but at a very cheap cost, so that you can mitigate some of the cost as you're doing the migration.
Great, thank you, Tim. Thank you. And then a little bit of a recap on the Champion offering here. So we do want to emphasize it's a holistic offering, on-premise, cloud, hybrid. We're talking about migrating applications here, not just servers, and we don't have time to get into all the technical nuances of that, but suffice it to say that the process is around the idea of extracting the application in a non-destructive way from its current server and reinstalling that application in a native way on the target server, whether that be a virtual server, a physical server, whether it be on-premise or on the cloud. So, pretty cool stuff, and certainly is a different twist than the heavy lifting that's involved in a lot of more traditional upgrade paths. Our offering includes all labor tools and project management. It's very soup to nuts, except for, as we mentioned, that there's an important role for our clients in testing applications. It's often cost neutral. We talked a lot about that, and Tim elaborated on what we mean by that a little bit more. We do provide crisp pricing. So once we get to the migration phase, this is not a case of saying, this is going to be time and materials, and we'll tell you how much it costs after we finish, kind of a process. We do seek to minimize that as much as possible, and be as crisp as possible going in. We also do have design services for premise or cloud solutions. So whatever your target is, if you don't currently have a target in mind or a target available, we can certainly make that happen for you. We've already talked about the assessment cost often being offset. So just some quick next steps, and then we'll get into some Q&A. So Champion, as we've talked about, we really recommend an assessment before year-end. That puts you in the best position to have 6 months or better to actually deal with the situation next year. And as I said, you may find out that you're in great shape and that you've got a relatively small amount of work to do, and that's good. Or you may find that you've really got 10 months worth of work to do in the next 7-8 months. Helps you understand where you stand, and that's of very high value to our customers. So that wraps up the formal part of the presentation, and we wanted to open it up to questions now, if we can. I'll get with Kendall. Can you help us bring in any questions that anyone might have out there?
Yes, I can. At this time, if you would like to ask a question, please press star 1 on your touchtone phone. You may withdraw your question at any time by pressing the pound key. Once again, it's star 1 to ask a question. And then we'll take our first question from Sean Evanflag. Go ahead. Your line's open.
Hey, Sean.
And
Hello?
Sean, your line is open.
Oh, hey guys. I saw on the deliverable we've got that you showed if it was migratable to 2012 server. Do we have an additional column to be put in there if it's migratable to 2008 R2, for example?
Yes, Sean, thank you. Great question. So in this particular instance, the client was targeting 2012 only, but absolutely we will include 2008 either additionally to 2012 or as a standalone target type. Okay, well, with that, if there are no questions, I guess we'll wrap it up for today. We want to thank everyone for spending some time with us today. My contact information is on the screen. Feel free to reach out either by telephone or email, and good luck with your 2003 upgrades. Thank you.